You're listening to the Night Demon Network. Go to nightdemon.net/subscriber to unlock more exclusive content.
Hello and welcome to the Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast. I'm your host, Nesbit, and anyone who has seen Night Demon live can attest that Night Demon are a band that are at their best when they're on a stage in front of an audience. And they've played over 700 shows, toured most of the world, but this history of non-stop touring and shows all started at one show, the first show in May of 2011. This is Night Demon, the first show. So March and April of 2011, two big, huge months in Night Demon history. The band forms, they jam for the first time, they write 4 songs, they record an EP, all of that in 2 months. So March 5th, 2011, Brent and Pat and Jarvis play together for the very first time, and by Friday, April 22nd, 2011, they had the 4 songs that would become the EP, recorded with Armand John Anthony in Satellite Studios in Ventura, California. So a lot going on for the band. And keep in mind at this point that Night Demon wasn't even a full-time band for these guys. Brent was in the fucking Wrath and played regularly. And they had a second full-length album about to be released. Jarvis was still in Jeff Hershey and the Heartbeats. And they had a full-length album, Soul Music Volume 1, about to be released. So Night Demon's not really their main focus at the time. But after having recorded this EP, the band were, they're ready to take that step and start playing live. And they got a huge opportunity on May 2nd, 2011, when Accept came through town with supporting band Sabaton. Here's Jarvis Leatherby.
In late April of 2011, we wrapped recording on the EP as Ancient Evil. And, well, that's what we were calling the band at the time. We had switched to that. That was the third name that we had, I guess, for the band. So we were really stoked on this recording, and we had just been kind of passing it around to some friends around town on, a burned CD or whatever. And our friend Alan Pena, who was doing bookings at the Ventura Theater at the time, had the legendary heavy metal band Accept coming through town on the Blood of the Nations tour. So this was kind of their comeback album in a way. They had just gotten their new singer, Mark, who was in the band TT Quick, to front the band. So this is like post Udo Dirkschneider years. And this was kind of their first album back with the new singer.
The lineup for Accept was Wolf Hoffman, Mark Tornillo, TT Quick's old singer. It was his debut. Peter Baltus on bass, Herman Frank on rhythm guitar, and Stefan Schwartzman on drums. Good, solid lineup. The band was excellent.
And it was a great record. It had gotten some great reviews. And metal was a little bit, I don't want to say it was on the upswing again, classic metal, but it was coming.
it was all coming back around again, and metal was right about to pop through and become a lot more popular. So it was really an interesting time.
I think we could all feel it, especially, you know, just with the way that Night Demon formed and us doing this thing. I mean, there must have been something in the ether. There was something in the air. There was a heavy metal energy, some kind of wave that took over all of us around the world, I believe. And, you know, Accept coming back together and getting a new singer, really, and getting some new blood and some new inspiration. I think, you know, they were riding that wave too. It was, again, I think it was just an invisible energy that all of us could feel, but didn't really know what was going on, but all kind of knew that we had to do our part in that.
We have a good friend. His name is Alan Pena. He was the booking agent at the Majestic Ventura Theater. And Accept was coming through on the Blood of the Nations tour, and he let me know about it. And I was completely stoked that the band was coming through, because I'm sure many people know I'm a huge Accept fan. I have Metal Heart tattooed on me, and I grew up listening to Balls to the Wall and Metal Heart religiously as a kid. So needless to say, I was ecstatic they were coming through town.
We kill and we die for the blood of the nations. A noble cause, and the blood is on their hands.
So Alan ends up hitting me up and saying, hey, does the Chalice want to open the Accept show? So I think at the time that I told him that I was doing a heavy metal band, I think we were still called the Chalice at the time. And so, you know, who knows what the band name is at this point. You know, when this came about, I think I do remember telling him, like, hey, no, we're called Ancient Evil or whatever. But I was all about it, and I was like super stoked.
They were originally asked to play, as far as I know, because of Jarvis's, you know, relationship with the people that ran the Ventura Theater. Our good friend Alan Pena was booking there at the time, and he knew obviously about what was going on. Night Demon was a new thing, and this show came around.
So Alan ends up asking Night Demon to open the show. 2011 was when Night Demon was created, and the 4-song EP was made and all that. So Night Demon was super fresh and underground, and nobody knew about him yet.
And at the time, Accept and obviously Sabaton were pretty unknown. I mean, Accept obviously was known, but they hadn't quite had the resurgence that they have now at that time. So it was a really low-selling show, and I think, you know, Alan was definitely looking for something, you know, a local band that would help draw, which Night Demon definitely would have done that.
And I was like, well, okay, so here's this band that we have with no intention on really being a band, but we make these 4 songs that are just heavily inspired by the new wave of British heavy metal, and it's some of the best stuff that we've ever done in our lives that we feel like, and it's definitely the most pure. I mean, the way that the songs were written and the way that they just came together so quickly and so naturally. So things are just, I mean, we're riding this wave of momentum that's been happening over the last 8 weeks for us, I guess. So this show is coming up, I mean, fairly soon. I believe it was maybe a few weeks after. And I had just told him, yes, like immediately, yes, we'll do the show. And then I went to tell the band, I went to tell Brent and Pat, and Brent was like, I mean, he couldn't fucking believe it. He was like, what? We're going to play with Accept? Like, yeah, let's do this. But Pat didn't want to do the gig for some reason, you know? He wasn't into the idea at all. He wasn't excited at all by any means, which really surprised me.
I believe it was Pat who said he really didn't want to play a live show. I don't know if he didn't feel prepared or for whatever reason I don't believe he wanted to play the show. I think Brent and Jarvis wanted to. They had enough material, make the show work. But in the end, Night Demon couldn't do the show, so they declined.
Pat, he loves metal, and I know he loves early Accept, and he knows all those tunes. And, I don't know what it was. I always thought, maybe Pat, really, I don't know. I'm not going to assume. He's been asked to come and speak about this, but he prefers to remain the mysterious man who played drums on that Night Demon EP. I'm paraphrasing there, but he did tell me recently something like that. So I'm not going to put words in his mouth, but he did not want to do the gig. So, as disheartening as that was to Brent and I mean, we didn't give him a hard time about it, and we just kind of passed it off because, again, we weren't a full-time band, and we had no ambition officially to make anything out of this. But I think on the heels of recording something that we felt was so magical, and then getting an offer to open for some of our heroes, like on our first gig out, that was just something that again, riding the wave of inspiration. I would say just that whole year of 2011 is the year that I've most lived in the moment in my life, at least that I can remember. And when you're riding that wave and you are in that moment and things like this happen, magic happens, and things start being drawn into your universal path. And that's what I think happened here. But it wasn't meant to be for us. But when you talk about the universal path, a lot of times the universal path runs throughout your whole life. And it's not about looking at what's right in front of you. It's about the things that you can't see around the corners that are going to intersect in your life. And what I'm talking about in a way less crystal twinkie way is that Night Demon not saying no ultimately and not doing this show, opening up for Accept, turned into Armand and Dusty's band at the time, New Liberty, being the opening act on the show.
Jarvis called me up and asked if New Liberty wanted to do it. And of course, at that time, New Liberty was, we were the hot commodity, and we were playing all the time, and we were ready to go play anything at the drop of a hat. I mean, we were like, call us to play your living room tomorrow night, and we'd be there, with a 30-pack and a bottle of Jack, and let's fucking party.
There is a lot of connection there because obviously Dusty and Armand would end up joining Night Demon and being 2/3 of the prime lineup of the band.
Jarvis then came to Armand and I's old band, New Liberty. We were kind of like a sleaze rock, Guns N' Roses / Thin Lizzy-ish type band. So it wasn't as much of a fit as if it would have been Night Demon opening the show, but we were excited to be asked to play the show.
So, of course, we took the gig. And it was, we had some people there for sure. But I also know it was kind of a high-priced ticket, and a lot of our fans have used to been seeing us at the bar all the time. So they weren't going to pay $20 or bucks or whatever it was to see us play for 30 minutes or 25 minutes. Although we did have some diehards that showed up and rocked out with us, but it was definitely a really pretty small turnout.
I remember Brent and I actually going to that gig. I want to say Pat was there, but don't quote me on that because I may be wrong. Maybe I'm just seeing this in a dream. And, if he did show up, I think I would be a little bummed that we didn't play it if we're all going to be there. But so maybe he wasn't. But I know that Brent and I definitely were in the house. And I remember that it was a very, very low attended show. They actually had a half house curtain that they had just put in this venue, which was really cool. And it was something that they had been talking about for a long time. I mean, this venue, the Ventura Theater, it's basically like our home venue. It's the venue that we grew up at. I've been promoting shows there since I was in high school. We've played most of our big gigs there. The Screams in the Night video, that's the stage that's on. But so it's a 1,250 seat venue built. It's an old theater built in 1928. And, not every show is going to draw that many people. So it's a bit cavernous and empty feeling when the attendance is low. But I remember this, it was a weeknight, and I think there was a couple hundred people at best at this show. So they closed the half house curtain, which is great. It's this big black curtain that basically cuts the venue in half and goes right behind the soundboard. So now it doesn't look like a 1,250 seat venue with a balcony. It looks more like a 500 capacity 2-tiered club with a large stage. So that was very cool. And it does help with the sound too. So it was a good vibe. Everybody was up front and up close. When they don't have that, the bar is in the back on the 4th tier. So you just have everybody spread out over this huge place. And it's a bit daunting to be on stage and have to deal with an audience like that. So it was an awesome night. It was a good vibe. And this was the first time that I'd seen the venue do this half house curtain. And it was very cool. So, Accept hadn't toured in a long time, and they hadn't been to the States. And it was, for the people that love them, it was awesome. It was also Sabaton's first U.S. tour. And Sabaton has become a very huge band now. So say what you will about them, a lot of our fans and probably, I can speak for myself and the other guys in the band, we're not really fans of that kind of metal, but those guys worked for it, and definitely bands like that have inspired Night Demon to actually go out and do it and make something happen. And so I do have a lot of respect for that band. But so it was their first US tour, and I remember the singer, they had a song, and they have like a lot of war themed songs, but they had a song about World War II, and it was something like, "Thank you to the Allied troops and the U.S. Army for saving us in the war." I mean, I don't even know if that's true, but he did say that, and I thought that was pretty funny. But yeah, so they were on the bill. New Liberty was the second band of the night, playing right before Sabaton. And then there was an opening band, some pay-to-play band that, sold tickets. I mean, the way that it generally has worked in Southern California, at least, I mean, God, since the dawn of time, since the dawn of rock and roll, but it's the pay-to-play bands that open shows, especially on the Sunset Strip, things like this. It's like basically a venue will will stack the bill with a bunch of opening bands earlier in the day and ask them to sell tickets to their friends. They get like discounted tickets that they sell to their friends and fans, if they have any, to come to the show. And usually bands are held to selling like a minimum of 50 tickets or something like that. And what that does is it gets the money to pay the touring bands that aren't going to draw that well. I mean, I see the economical side of it and how that works. However, it pretty much guarantees that there's going to be a bunch of shitty opening bands on it. I mean, I've done it in previous bands. Night Demon's never done it, and everybody has to start somewhere. So I'm not against not doing it. Everybody has to pay their dues in life. But anytime you have a buy-on band that buys on to be on a tour or buys on to a show, chances are they're not at the level yet where they're a great band or even a good band at that. You know, I mean, bands that can draw people and bands that are great, promoters are seeking to pay and seeking to book. And you know, good local bands will get thrown on a show with a national act coming through town, and they'll be getting paid because they're the ones that are bringing the local audience to this show. So I think that was more New Liberty's level on this. And this opening band was the band that had to sell a bunch of tickets, who, you know, sounded nothing like the heavy metal that was there for the night, except Sabaton or New Liberty. I mean, they were, I don't even remember their name, but they were pretty terrible. And maybe I'll let the other guys tell the story since they were on the gig, but there was definitely some funny shit that happened with that band that night.
Funny story about the opening band. They were just clowns, and I don't even think they even sold that many tickets. I'd say they might have sold 20 tickets, and they went on and went over their time and ended up getting basically pulled when they were like playing their last song. Security from the theater started pulling pieces of gear off the stage while the band was still playing. They killed all of the amps and all of the PA from front of house, and the drummer was still playing, and security started taking pieces of his drum kit off the stage. And the band like freaked out and caused a scene, and Accept ended up shutting down all access to bands backstage. So here I am. It's a dream gig for me, opening for Accept, and I don't even get to go backstage and see the band and possibly meet them or whatever. So it blew all opportunity of being backstage, which really stunk, but it was hilarious to see the first band's gear being taken off side stage left, just piece by piece, and this guy playing his drum set as it's being whittled down to nothing. So funny. And that is probably the only thing I can really remember vividly is that. So it was great. And I had Blood of the Nations at the time, so I was listening to that record a lot. They opened with Teutonic Terror, which I think is a great song off that album. And it was just a memorable night all around and funny. And who would have thought that Armand and I would be in Night Demon and then be able to go out on tour with Accept one day, just really made it something special.
So Accept and Sabaton, May 2011, almost the first Night Demon show. But instead, two future members of Night Demon get the gig in their band at the time, New Liberty. Now, Night Demon did eventually go on to do a full European tour with Accept on the Rise of Chaos World Tour in 2018.
Good times, and then, you know, who would have known 6, 7 years later, we would be opening for Accept all across Europe. One of the best tours I've ever been on in my whole career here.
Obviously, we ended up going out and touring with Accept, and got to spend plenty of time with Wolf and Peter and the other guys, Mark as well. Didn't know Mark at the time, but have grown to be, pretty close with Mark and the Accept family. So a lot of good times with those guys that we had. If somebody would have told me when New Liberty opened, like, oh, you're going to be the drummer in Night Demon, you're going to get to go out and tour with Accept in Europe, I would have just been like, yeah, you're crazy. No way.
All in all, being at that gig was very inspiring for myself and for Brent. It was really cool to see Accept come back. And the size of the audience didn't matter to them. But they sounded amazing. And at that point, we were just like, man, we got to play some gigs with Night Demon. We have to do this. And seeing Dusty and Armand up there with New Liberty, we thought that Night Demon was a better fit on that bill. But those guys did well, and their fans came to see them, and they were having a great time. And we just really wanted to be a part of that. So there was definitely probably a little bit of jealousy running through our veins, but we knew we had something good. We knew we had something good going here. We just had to get our drummer convinced to play a show, basically.
So the Accept show didn't happen for Night Demon, but leading up to their official first show, there's a lot going on with the members of the band and their main projects, especially Jarvis's main project, Jeff Hershey and the Heartbeats.
Got a lonely life away from here. I hate to tell you, but your friends, they ain't here. Oh, and I can't wait for the night you come looking for a fight. Oh, I put my fist right into you. There ain't nothing you can do. Oh, I'm gonna knock you down, knock you down, knock you down to the ground. Oh, I'm gonna knock you down, knock you down, knock you down to the ground.
Looking back at my calendar here, I always save this stuff. I noticed that Accept show happened on May 2nd of 2011. So 4 days later on the 6th, we had a recording session over at Armand's, which was not the captain's quarters yet. It was Satellite Studios. And I believe that this was to mix the EP. And 6 days later on May 12th, Brent's main band at the time, The Fucking Wrath, performed a show at a local venue out here called Zoe's. Now, I remember that gig pretty well, actually. And the following day, May 13th, 2011, my solo project, Jeff Hershey and the Heartbeats, released our first full-length album, Soul Music Volume 1. And we did an album release show at a local club called the Bombay.
Alright, here we go. Soul Music Volume 1.
This show was heavily anticipated locally, and I believe we did a pre-sale of around 350 tickets. So it's pretty big. It's a pretty big audience to have in the bar. I mean, it's pretty much over capacity for this place. But I remember that night. I remember it went very, very well. And, we talked about the Heartbeats a bit in the Roots of the Demon episodes on this podcast. But, not to understate it at all. I mean, I was at a point in my life where this was this was the main thing for me musically. Brent was doing the fucking rap, and I was doing Jeff Hershey and the Heartbeats, and I'd put a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of energy creating this alter ego, crazy roots rock and roll showman, and putting this album together. We recorded this album completely analog. Nothing digital had touched this thing. I mean, we stayed vintage to the core. Nothing in the studio was post 1970. We weren't even allowed to bring cell phones in there. I mean, we really went for it here, and it was paying off. I mean, right out of the gates, we had a very strong local following, and I already had a lot of interest in Europe for the band. You know, I wasn't about to derail this thing that I worked so hard for a heavy metal band that we already thought nobody would give a shit about. And obviously we're not even a real band. And, you know, our drummer isn't really interested in playing gigs with us or even being in this band. And, you know, I mean, it was fun for him, and he really took it that way, which is awesome because that's all we ever expected of him. So again, I'm not trying to put words in his mouth. Pat is a wonderful human being, and he's a really, really great guy, and he's an awesome musician. He's just a cool guy to hang out with. So I have nothing bad to say about him. I'm just saying this is the reality of it, you know. And the other thing that I think that needs to be mentioned is that he planned on going back to college. And so at this point, I'm not sure how old Pat was. I mean, he was definitely probably in his early 30s, but he had planned on going back to school, and he had the full support of his family to do that. And he was going to move up north, 10, 11 hours north of here to go do that. So at the time, I think, he was probably just being smart about it, and he didn't want to get himself into a situation where he was going to make commitments to other people when he knew that he was going to break that. So he was going back to school. He was going up to start in the fall semester. So this time we're heading into the summer. I mean, what kind of future is there for that, right?
Hey guys, Nesbitt here. If you'd like to support Night Demon and this podcast, the best way to do it is to become a Night Demon subscriber. Not only will you be doing your part to support a true heavy metal band out there really living it, you'll also gain access to a ton of extras. Bonus audio content, a subscriber-only merch store with rare items from the band's archives. You can stream never-before-heard demos and unearth live concerts from the live vaults. Communicate with the other Night Demon diehards on an exclusive subscriber forum, and gain early access to all press releases, album pre-orders, new merchandise, and a ton more. And another thing that I think is pretty cool is Night Demon will be donating 10% of every subscription fee to the Metal Cares Foundation, which is a charitable fund the band started in 2014 to aid those in our metal community. So head over to nightdemon.net/subscriber and join us as we make heavy metal history together as one. And on a side note, I'll personally think you're a grade A badass. So even though the Heartbeats were just hitting their stride and really poised for success with this full-length release, they have a sold-out album release show, interest from Europe. Even with everything going right for this band, heavy metal music was still calling to Jarvis.
So we do this Heartbeats show. It's a huge success. I'm feeling really good about it. But something in the back of my mind is, there's still a magic with Night Demon, and it's so fresh and it's so new. And this stuff is just coming effortlessly at this point. So, I mean, I don't know how many times we've talked about this. I don't know how many times that it's been said that Night Demon got together and rehearsed once and did a cover song of Diamond Head, and then rehearsed the first 4 times officially and wrote a classic song in each rehearsal. And then the 5th rehearsal was the recording of our debut. I think it's been exhausted how many times that's been said, but it's the truth. And so with the Heartbeats record, it was a lot of time writing and perfecting the songs and getting them good enough to play live with the band to tape. And I think having a release like Night Demon and being able to go back to music just for the fun of it and the enjoyment of it, and having this kind of magical combination that we had at the time between the 3 of us and having that kind of chemistry really lent itself to me being more attracted to that. It was a little bit bittersweet because I had just, I had spent the previous 3 years really getting things tight enough and just trying to write the best songs I could, classic R&B style, to get that Heartbeats record done. And I am proud of it. And it was a great milestone in my life. But I once heard somebody say this, and I mean, look, I don't know. I may be jumping around here. I didn't officially retire the Heartbeats until 2014 and go for Night Demon. But at that time, when this was happening, it was just such a, life will do this to you where you have something really good happening and then something else will pop in that, it's not temptation. It's a sign. And it's really hard, and very few people do this in life, but true visionaries that strive for greatness, they will always trade in good for great. And when great comes by, you know it. You feel it in your bones. You'll try and deny it. Your logical brain will tell you that it's not right because, the people around you don't think it's right, or your past will tell you that it's not right. Your past way of thinking or the way things have happened for you in the past will tell you that it's not right. But deep inside, what you feel is right, you always know it. And things like this do happen in life. And I think this is exactly one of those situations. So, it took a lot for me to actually to put things in motion where Night Demon was going to start transitioning into being a real band. It didn't take a lot for me emotionally at all, but I did have to see things through with the Heartbeats. And at that time, the year before in 2010, I had like a nervous breakdown because I was doing too many things. I was in like 6 or 7 bands, literally 6 or 7 bands at the same time. And I had a full-time job and things were coming to a head. And there was one point where I was doing like 5 gigs a week with each band, not consistently, but there was like a 2 or 3 week block where that was happening. And I just like totally lost it. And it was a really, really bad time in my life. And I realized I had to scale some things back. So to kind of feel like, again, that this was happening to me where I had these 2 polar opposites tugging at me. But, there were both things that I created. So in the end, it was my decision. And eventually, the Heartbeats, I did retire that band, but I did accomplish everything that I wanted to do with it.
So the Heartbeats album release show, a huge success for Jarvis, but exactly 1 week later, Night Demon gets their first gig, and it came along due to future Night Demon member, the producer of the EP, then guitarist of New Liberty, Armand John Anthony.
At this time, we did this album release show. It was successful. The album's out. The press is talking about it. Europe's talking about it. Tours are starting to be booked. And I think the following day after that show, Armand had hit me up and said that his Thin Lizzy tribute band, Bad Reputation, was playing at Bombay and wanted to know if Night Demon wanted to open the show. So at this point, I just, I talked to Brent and we talked to Pat, and he actually said yes. He's like, yeah, I'll do it. I think it was kind of a no pressure situation for him to open at a bar versus going on the big stage and opening for Accept and all this stuff, right? So we had a gig, right? On the very same stage that I basically put out the first record of my solo career and had the place filled to capacity and then some. A big success for me. I would be back on that same stage with my new band, Night Demon, which would inevitably change my life completely for the better. And we'd be playing our first gig, opening for a tribute band that plays the music of one of my favorite bands, Thin Lizzy, and features the guitar player who has been a friend of mine since we were kids and just recorded the Night Demon EP and is the future guitar hero of Night Demon. So again, the universe, it'll put things in your path. You just have to keep following what's true to you. And so this ended up being the very first Night Demon show.
Yeah, so I was part of that show because I was in a Thin Lizzy tribute band called Bad Reputation. That whole thing started, obviously, because of my love for the band and because I had been in a couple other tribute bands. Well, mainly one other one, the Leonard Skinner tribute band. I was in that with another guitar player named Rick Hunter, who he built the rehearsal rooms that everybody used to practice in back at that time. And so just from kind of being in there, I'd been in there. I had my first studio in there. At this point, I had already been in that place for a good 10 years. And so at one point, he had just asked me, because he had heard me play or whatever, and he had asked me to join the Lizzy thing. I mean, not the Lizzy thing. At first, I joined the Skinner thing. And at first, I was kind of hesitant, but I decided to give it a shot. And then later on, after that thing started going, I was like, well, hey, man, let's do it. I knew he was a big Thin Lizzy fan as well. And we had always talked about it, but we were always hesitant because of finding the right singer, the right frontman. We had a drummer that he had met, this guy named Patrick, who was a killer Brian Downey style drummer. And he was a huge Lizzy head and knew all the stuff like the back of his hand, basically like the rest of us. It's very similar to like how the Sabbath thing came together with myself and Jarvis and Tony and Aaron knowing the songs, just like, we just knew the songs. So starting that thing was a no-brainer. Didn't take a lot of work, So that was the same kind of thing with this band. So we found the guy, Melvin Spooney, who actually was in a band called the Dan Reed Network back in the day. And, he didn't really know Lizzy as much, but he had the look. He was a black man. He played bass, and he had a good stage presence. So we kind of threw the idea out at him, and he really went in and did his homework and learned that stuff really well. so we decided to go ahead with the thing, and we booked this gig at Bombay in Ventura, which we've all played many times with many other bands around. And there's been Frost and Fires there, and it was just our club,
It was at Bombay. It was on the front stage. Front stage is really small. It's like a half crescent stage that's pretty shallow, and the bar's long, and it has like a little area in the front where everybody can kind of crowd in. Then it kind of narrows down this hallway along the bar and along the wall towards the back where like the kitchen and the restrooms are, and then there's a backstage. But at that time, it was all set up for the club back there. They didn't have a stage. It was all based on the club scene in the back room. But the front was where they had all the bands, and the smoking patios right next to the main front stage there. When you have the doors open and there's a band playing, people will pretty much just walk into Bombay because it's inviting and there's a band playing, and it's a cool spot in Ventura. I like Bombay. It's a cool spot to hang. People there that run it are always nice to us, and we always had good shows there. A lot of good times at Bombay's for sure. And the Night Demon Bad Reputation show was one of them.
Hey, Robin Ryder here, drummer for Twin Temple. Remembering the first time I saw Night Demon, and actually booked Night Demon at a local bar here in Ventura called the Bombay Bar and Grill. Used to run a night there with all different types of music, mostly rock and punk. But I had a Thin Lizzy tribute band playing that night, and Night Demon played the first show opening for them, and I actually not only booked the night, but I also got to run sound for Night Demon, and Jarvis actually had asked me, typical lighting scenarios, blacking out in between songs and all that kind of stuff, and occasionally I'd play around with lights. I'm no LD, smaller venue, but I gave him a light show. It was a lot of fun, actually. I remember having a really good time. Great band, right off the bat. They were just a phenomenal, really, really good band, and super fun night. And just a funny side story, the band that they were opening up for, Thin Lizzy Tribute, just so happened to be Armand and Dusty playing guitar in that band. So just kind of a funny night. I guess it was meant to be. But anyways, that's me remembering the first time that I saw Night Demon and their very first show.
So that's the story of Night Demon's almost first show and how their actual first show came to be. And one thing that's cool about this is that there's video and audio of the entire first show. And that's what we're going to be digging into next week, along with more commentary about the show from the band. It's pretty cool to realize how, even though the three current members of Night Demon weren't playing together at this point, their lives were connected and, with overlapping shows, and they keep turning up in each other's lives right up until the fates align and they finally end up together in the band. And I just mentioned that there's audio and video of this whole first Night Demon show, and in case you haven't figured it out, it's available to view or listen to streaming in the bonus section of nightdemon.net, along with countless other Night Demon artifacts and relics. So for more info and even more complete story, check that out. Until next time, this is Nesbitt signing off.
Thanks for listening to the Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast. Head over to nightdemon.net, click on the subscriber tab, and sign up to access exclusive weekly bonus content. If you would like to donate to support the Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast, you can do so through PayPal at paypal.me/nightdemonmetal. Additionally, if you have not already done so, please subscribe, like, rate, and review the show on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts.
All hail, Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast listeners. This is Dusty Squires chiming in to tell you about my brand new signature sticks from the London Drumstick Company. I've dreamt of having my very own drumsticks ever since I was a wee lad, and LDC made that a possibility for me. Founded in 2016 in London, England, the birthplace of heavy metal, the London Drumstick Company has trailblazed a path through the music industry and taken the drummer world by storm. When I met them for the first time, they knew their product was going to withstand the beatings of a Night Demon show. They took the time to work with me on getting everything just right. The balance and weight of my sticks are the same no matter what, and the durability is bar none the best I've ever had. I know my sticks will last through the set night after night. I'm truly honored to work with a company that caters to their players the way LDC does. Their innovation and attention to detail is what separates them from the rest of the stick makers out there. Their custom stick sleeves are unbelievable and really make the entire presentation complete. Wait until you see the design they came up with for me. It blew my mind and was a surprise to say the least. They have all kinds of amazing swag, including hoodies, t-shirts, drummer shorts, drum keys, stick bags, towels, face masks, practice pads, and much, much more. Even if you're not a drummer, you can be a part of Demon history and order my brand new signature sticks direct from their website. How cool is that? And to top it off, the London Drumstick Company are giving an exclusive offer to the Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast listeners. Go to londondrumsticks.co.uk and receive a 15% store-wide discount using promo code DEMONSTICKS. All capital letters, no spaces, Demon Sticks. DEMONSTICKS. I can't thank everyone there enough for the opportunity to be a part of their family and for them trusting me with their amazing products. See you metal maniacs on the road very soon. And yes, the wood chips will be flying.
Greetings, boils and ghouls. This is your comrade, the Crypt Keeper here, reporting dead from the sanctuary of the strange. Tonight's macabre myth is a fright-filled feature, one overflowing with monsters, madness, and magic.
Visit our website at monstersmadnessandmagic.com to stay up to date on all the dark dealings within the sanctuary of the strange. Enjoy the show.
Hey Metalheads, I'm Mark and I host the Metal Forge. Let me tell you about the show. The Metal Forge features the best underground metal from all over the world. We spend every week with a different artist with interviews, in-depth conversations, and most of all, the music. We also feature audience interactivity where you can submit your questions to the upcoming guests. New episodes are out every Friday at noon Eastern Time at metalforgeradio.com or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Want to know what's going on in the world of music? Then tune in to the Nothing Shocking Podcast, a non-genre based, all-ages friendly rock and roll program. Join us weekly for interviews with all your favorite rock stars from the mainstream to the underground. You can find us at nothingshocking.libsyn.com or anywhere you download podcasts.
Okay, metalheads, you've been complaining that there has not been a channel that plays all of the heavy metal videos from past, present, and future for years and years at this point. Well, that time is over. Heavy Metal Television is back. HeavyMetalTelevision.net is the website. Go there. You can see videos playing 24/7, 365, all the time, all the best from the old school, the new school, and everything in between. Check it out, heavymetaltelevision.net. It is where the metal is.